chances are if you clicked on this video, you are stuck in a predicament of, do I save my money and buy a budget camera like this? Or do I use some of that money and get a higher end webcam? Let's talk about the pros and cons of both and why one may be the better option for you, depending on what you're creating. I'm Joe. Welcome to Matzo Excel. Let's talk about the differences and what might be better for you. Let's go. Why would you get a mirrorless camera or a budget-friendly camera like this? So let's talk about the advantages of a mirrorless camera. One, you get a bigger sensor, meaning you're going to be able to get more light in. You're maybe going to get higher resolutions. You're going to get a cleaner overall image because of just how big the sensor is compared to what you typically find in a webcam, even those that are higher end. B, you're going to be able to potentially have interchangeable lenses. Now, some cameras that you can buy may not have what's called an interchangeable lens, and they have what's called a fixed lens, meaning you can't replace it. I usually recommend, if you're going to invest in a mirrorless camera, get one that allows an interchangeable lens. Reason being, you typically can get a better image when you buy higher end or more expensive glass or lenses versus your body. And that's from my years of experience in photography. You're able to get that cleaner bokeh or that background blur, as a lot of people will refer to it as. You may be able to get more further depth of field or further away. So like, we're talking about how wide this is versus maybe how narrow an image could be. And I'm simulating by zooming right now to show you that. But those are some of the reasons why you'd pick a mirrorless camera. You get more portability. So if you want to record on the go, or if you want to take photos and use it for other things, like thumbnail creation, stuff like that, you have an option with that as well. What are some of the disadvantages of a mirrorless camera? One, you're going to need usually more than just the camera itself. A lot of the cameras that are coming out do have what's called UVC capabilities, meaning that you could plug it in via USB to your computer and it'll automatically be recognized as a webcam, or webcam mode per se, right? But some cameras like this one doesn't have that. So I have to download an app from the company that created the camera to see if I can then connect it for usage. But some of the drawbacks with that is you're going to get a little bit less quality. Like Nikon, for example, most of the cameras don't have UVC enabled. So you have to download their utility app and you're stuck at like 720p. Maybe like 15 frames per second, which is really god awful. In order to get around that, you have to get what's called a capture card. So you can get something like Elgato. They have their 4K capture card. Shadowcast is one of my favorites because it can do 2K capture, which is great for any kind of video work or video gameplay. And so that's another $50 to $100. So you have to get that. You're going to just get some cables. And then the second issue is power. You could buy a dummy battery for the camera, right? Otherwise, you're relying on the battery. The battery could die. Then you're going to lose your feed and all this other things, other like concepts, right? Which leads into the 2.5 or the third problem is overheating. A lot of these cameras are not meant to go to distance of like a super like 2, 3, 4 hour stream, especially as you get into higher resolutions and higher frame rates. Meaning, if I try to shoot 4K 30 with this and just let it run for streaming, it's going to fail after about 30 or 40 minutes. Unless I take other interventions like camera coolers, different types of battery mounts and things of that nature, which again adds to the price tag of this. Now, again, like I said, trade-offs. You get really clean image and other things like that, but you have to have workarounds to make it last or make it work for you. Not all cameras are like that though. There are some mirrorless cameras that are meant to go to distance. They have internal cooling or they have capabilities where you can set so it doesn't overheat as much, or you reduce your frame rate and things of that nature, which you'll still get a really clean, crisp image that you can upscale later on, but you're going to be limiting what you thought was a 4K footage to like 1080p. It's still going to look great and most likely even better than the higher end camera, but sometimes maybe not. But that's things to consider about a mirrorless camera. So then why would someone even consider a higher end webcam? Well, one thing, it's price. Usually even the highest end webcams are looking between $200 to $500. So you're already going to potentially getting a better savings in the long run versus a mirrorless camera, especially because you don't need to buy all these different accessories to make sure it can handle, right? 2, you do get 4K footage and all that in these cameras. There's image sensors, they're just not as big as something you'd find in a mirrorless camera, but you're going to get just as good quality. Maybe it might be a little bit less though. So like with the Insta360, you can actually use the Link 2 and get 4K 30. However, if I compare 4K 30 from a Link 2 versus 4K 30 from like my Nikon, it's going to be night and day. Webcams get close, and the higher the price of the webcam usually means a larger sensor, and you get closer and closer to that quality. Like Link 2 is one of my favorite daily use cameras, but if I want higher end, I actually have an OBSBot camera that I use for higher end stuff, but that's for another day. But what's an advantage for a webcam, like a higher end webcam, over like a mirrorless camera? And I'm going to tell you, the biggest thing is the length of usage, right? A webcam is built and meant to handle long, strenuous video feeds over long periods of time. They are meant to handle heat and dissipate it much better than something like a mirrorless camera. So I could sit on a 3-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour stream with a camera like this, and it's going to look good, it's going to sound good, and it's going to last an entire time without cutting out, versus something like this may cut out, I guess, after about 40 minutes, both shooting 4K 30. Now, because it's a smaller image sensor and there's other internals, this is going to be able to go the gamut a lot longer than something like this. So that's definitely an advantage webcam. Another disadvantage about a webcam is the fact that you can't really change the lens on this. It is a fixed lens, and with that comes some drawbacks. Now, lower end webcams, you have what's called a fixed focus, meaning that whatever it covers like a distance, and usually means it's like a higher aperture or a simulated aperture, where it's going to focus on things from like here to like here, right? So you're not going to get that background blur. You're going to have to use artificial like AI and things like that to try to replicate that background. It's not going to look as clean. You're going to see in the details around the edges that just doesn't look as good, right? The higher end, the webcam, you actually get better abilities as far as for focusing, replicating that bokeh, because they're using either multiple lenses or glass in the camera itself. Like one of my favorite webcams is by OBSBot, because of their internal glass that they actually have built in, that you get almost DSLR like quality. And so it really can run the gamut, but you can't change it. That aspect ratio or that like depth of field, that's what you're going to get in a webcam. They look great, but they'll never be to that DSLR level. So that's a kind of a negative, but it could be a positive too, depending on what you're trying to record or stream. Enough with like the technical, one may be better than the other. Let's talk about your application of usage, or why you need it in the first place. Are you a live streamer that's going to constantly be in the same setup or scenario? Are you a vlogger who's going to be vlogging mainly from like one location? Do you really need portability and the ability to record outside of your typical working environment? Those are the things you need to consider and think about, especially when it comes to, do I want a webcam versus a mirrorless camera? I usually recommend, if you are a creator who's going to be doing more stuff outside of your typical streaming environment or your creator environment, you need like video on the go, you need abilities to take pictures and do stuff, then consider stepping into the mirrorless world. You can work that camera backwards and work for your events, but chances are most people will probably end up getting a webcam down the road. A lot of people will use their cameras, but again, the avenue in which you end up going to create content, you may not want to be using that camera for live streams, especially if you're focusing more on that offline long form content, or even the short form content, if you will. Versus if you're primarily a live engagement or one-stop shop kind of lab experience, then a webcam is going to be really good for you. Plus, if you are a person who likes to incorporate multiple angles and things like that, that's when you could invest in potentially the price of one mirrorless camera into 2 high-end webcams and really spice up your setup or environment and get multiple angles and things of that nature. If you're a podcaster, to be real, I would say your audio investment is going to be a lot better in the long run than your video investment. Because all these cameras can have their internal mics, they have, sound isolation and stuff like that, but you could save your money, get the webcam, and then use that additional funds that you saved and buy a higher end mic or audio system to be able to then take your video content and push it to audio sources for reach like Spotify or Apple Podcasts and things like that. If I was starting over, I would probably invest in one mid-high cam. I would most likely either use something like an Insta360, which is so far one of my favorite webcams to use. I actually use it daily from work. Or I invest in a camera like what you're seeing. But that's a mystery camera that I can't talk about yet. I'm a photographer by nature and a videographer. I can do more stuff outdoors. So I'd actually go with a mirrorless camera. But in all transparency, I did do that. And I have this, which was my primary streaming camera. But as of late, I actually been using another more higher end webcam for my daily streams or my typical streaming content and stuff like that. Even as a B-roll recording camera. One of them you've seen me talk about before on this channel. It's the Osbot Tail Air. I'll actually put a little video card here if you want to go back and look at it. I think it's about $500, which I think is a really good investment if you're looking for that primary streaming and desk-based content with maybe some outside stuff. But there is one more camera to talk about. I'm just not there yet to show you. So we will have to wait until I can talk about that little surprise. So you gotta subscribe to the channel if you're ready to see the camera. That camera that I'm working on is actually what I'm recording with right now. So if you like what I'm recording on, you're going to have to follow the channel when that video drops. I'm Joe. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this kind of gives you a little better idea and decision guide of what you want to buy. Down below, and I'll pin it to the comments, are my favorite webcams and my favorite mirrorless cameras that I use for the regular. Go check them out. They're affiliate links. Helps drive this channel. And until next time, catch you guys later. Peace.